The day I found out my own daughter had secretly changed my will, I realized the biggest danger in my life had never been a stranger. It was someone who had called me dad for 43 years. What happened next was so unbelievable that the courtroom needed less than 10 minutes to expose the truth. If stories about family betrayal and impossible moments keep you watching until the very end, I'd appreciate you subscribing to Family Betrayal. It helps more than you know. And one more thing before I continue. The faces, photos, background footage, and scenes you see in this video are simply visual illustrations to help tell the story. They're not meant to represent the real people involved. I spent most of my life building a small construction company outside Columbus, Ohio. Nothing came easy. My wife, Linda, and I skipped vacations, worked weekends, and counted every dollar just so our daughter, Emily, could have opportunities we never did. When Linda passed away after her battle with cancer, I felt like half of me disappeared with her. Emily became my only family, and I trusted her with everything. At first, she was exactly the daughter every father hopes for. She called often, brought groceries, and insisted on driving me to doctor's appointments. I thought she was grieving her mother just like I was. Looking back now, I wonder if she had already started making plans while I was still trying to survive the loneliness. Then little things began bothering me. Bills I didn't remember paying had already been signed. My filing cabinet looked different. Important papers were no longer where I always kept them. Every time I asked Emily, she'd smile and tell me I was simply getting older. Those words hurt more than she realized. One afternoon, I mentioned updating my will because I wanted to leave a scholarship in Linda's name. Emily's smile disappeared for just a second before she quickly changed the subject. That tiny reaction stayed in my mind all night. A week later, I unlocked my office drawer and noticed the envelope containing my original will had been opened. My heart started pounding. Someone had been inside, and I suddenly feared I already knew who. Have you ever ignored a warning because you couldn't believe someone you loved would betray you? I wish I hadn't ignored mine. The next morning, I quietly called my attorney, expecting a simple answer. Instead, he told me something that made my blood run cold. My attorney went completely silent after checking my file. Then he asked me a question I'll never forget. "Are you sitting down?" I laughed nervously and said yes. He told me there was already a newer version of my will on file. According to the document, I had signed it 6 months earlier. Everything was different. The scholarship for Linda was gone. The donations to veterans' charities had disappeared. My old friend Mark, who I'd promised a small piece of land, had been removed completely. Everything, every single dollar, every property, every investment, had been left to Emily. I couldn't even breathe. I never signed another will. I whispered. There was a long pause before my attorney quietly replied. "Then we have a very serious problem." He emailed me a copy immediately. The moment I saw the signature, my stomach turned. At first glance, it looked exactly like mine. But something felt wrong. I spent nearly an hour comparing it with old birthday cards, tax papers, and business contracts. Then I noticed it. For over 40 years, I'd written my last name with one unusual habit. The letter S always leaned slightly backward because of an old hand injury from a construction accident. It wasn't something most people would ever notice. On the new will, the S leaned forward. Someone had copied my handwriting, but they hadn't copied the reason it looked that way. I called Emily that evening and casually mentioned I had been organizing paperwork. Her voice changed instantly. She asked strange questions. "Did you find everything? Was anything missing?" She'd never asked those questions before. That was the moment I stopped seeing my daughter as someone protecting me. I started wondering if she was protecting herself. My attorney told me not to confront her again. Instead, he hired one of the country's most respected handwriting experts. Days later, the expert called with news that shocked even him. He said the forged signature wasn't the strongest evidence. There was something else on that document, something almost impossible to fake. And once a judge saw it, the entire case could collapse in minutes. The handwriting expert spread my original documents across a long conference table. He barely looked at the signatures. Instead, he studied the way I formed ordinary words. Then he smiled. "People can copy a signature," he said. "They almost never copy a lifetime of writing habits." He showed me something I had never noticed about myself. Every time I wrote the word "because," I shortened it to "Beck" in personal documents before finishing the sentence. I also left a tiny space before every comma. It wasn't proper grammar, but I'd done it for decades without thinking. My original letters, business notes, and journals all showed the same habits. The new will didn't. Whoever created it copied my signature, but wrote the rest of the document like a completely different person. Then came the biggest surprise. The expert asked for one more sample, an old Christmas card Linda had saved in a memory box. I almost cried holding it. Inside was a short note I had written to her years earlier. He compared it with the forged will and looked directly at my attorney. I can testify with confidence that this document was not written by your client. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope. But hope didn't erase the pain. Emily was still my daughter. Every night, I stared at family photos, asking myself where everything had gone wrong. Had I spoiled her? Had grief changed her? Or had I simply refused to see the truth? My attorney filed the lawsuit immediately. Emily responded with confidence. Through her lawyer, she claimed I was confused because of my age and insisted I had willingly signed the updated will. Reading those words hurt more than losing the money ever could. The court scheduled a hearing faster than I expected. The night before, I barely slept. I kept hearing Linda's voice telling me to stand up for what was right, even when it hurt. The next morning, I walked into the courthouse and saw Emily sitting only a few feet away. She wouldn't even look me in the eyes. Then the judge entered. Within moments, the handwriting expert was sworn in. What he revealed next changed the entire courtroom, and the trial was practically over before Emily's lawyer even realized they had lost. The courtroom became so quiet that I could hear the pages turning as the judge reviewed the evidence. My attorney called the handwriting expert to the stand. He calmly explained every difference between my real writing and the forged will. Then he pointed to something no one else had noticed. The document claimed it had been signed on a Tuesday afternoon. I smiled sadly. That Tuesday, I had been 2 states away attending my brother's funeral. There were hotel records, gas receipts, church photos, and even a live stream from the service showing me there at the exact time the will was supposedly signed. Emily's lawyer looked stunned. Then came the final blow. Mark, my oldest friend, took the stand. He had known me for nearly 50 years. We had worked side by side, signed thousands of business papers together, and watched each other's children grow up. Without hesitation, he identified the signature as a fake and explained the little habits in my handwriting that only someone who had seen me write for decades would recognize. My attorney placed Linda's old Christmas card beside the forged will. 28,183. The difference was impossible to ignore. The judge looked at Emily and quietly asked if she wished to continue defending the document. Her attorney leaned over, whispered something to her, and after only a few seconds, she lowered her head. They withdrew the will. The hearing had lasted less than 10 minutes. I should have felt victorious, but all I felt was heartbreak. The judge restored my original will and referred the forgery to the proper authorities for further investigation. As we walked out of the courthouse, Emily finally stopped me. With tears in her eyes, she whispered, "Dad, I'm sorry. I wanted to believe those words. Part of me always will. But trust isn't rebuilt with an apology. It's rebuilt with years of honesty. And sometimes those years never come." I updated my estate plan one final time. I created the scholarship in Linda's name just as I had promised, donated to the charities that meant the most to us, and left my remaining estate to the people who had stood beside me with loyalty instead of greed. Looking back, I learned that the greatest inheritance isn't money or property. It's character. And once someone trades their character for wealth, they usually lose both. What would you have done if your own child had secretly changed your will? Let me know in the comments because I'd genuinely like to hear your thoughts. If this story moved you, share it with someone who believes family should always be built on trust, not greed. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to Family Betrayal for more emotional stories that remind us how fragile and how valuable trust really is.